All right, folks. So the panel, we're rejoined by Fred Fleitz and Seton Motley. And gentlemen, today we had the first major, I guess, offensive move by the Ukrainian rebels downing helicopters, and I guess that's a good thing. But Obama and Merkel held a press conference today after they met at the White House and talking about more sanctions. And Obama again went out of his way to say something to the effect of, this is nothing personal to Vladimir Putin, Why, Fred, does he, first of all, what do you make of today's events in Ukraine and at the White House? And why does he go, bend over backwards, as opposed to bowing down, I guess, to Putin and, to try to make sure that he doesn't get personally offended by all this?
Ukraine. We've never understood why. I mean, the administration doesn't understand why what happened, and they don't have a solution. We can't sanction the Russians to give up their interests in Ukraine, and the sanctions that we have are so mild, they're like pinpricks. What's happening with the rebels in Ukraine is that they know they can do this because the Ukrainian government is so weak and so afraid of a Russian invasion, they can get away with violent efforts and not worry about retaliation. We really need a complete review of our policy to try to somehow stop the Russians from going in and at the same time resolving their security concerns.
I should have said these were pro-Russian rebels who shot down Ukrainian helicopters, obviously.
It's a bad development.
Yeah, a very bad development. And what do you, Seton, it's just more of the same. You could basically take what the president said today and play the tapes back from what he's been saying all along, and nothing changes no matter what the developments on the ground are. The rhetoric is almost exactly the same.
Well, in answer to your original question, he's bending over backwards so far to prove how flexible he can be in his second term. As far as I think what we're witnessing here is, because Ukraine is not a part of NATO, if he wants to tee up a NATO country, we are obligated by treaty to respond with force if he invades militarily. But if ethnic Russians within the borders of a NATO country start, shooting down helicopters and stuff like that, that's not an official NATO treaty trigger. So what I think this is like a Ukrainian test run to try to get the ethnic Russians to do what the Russian military wants to do but can't from a treaty perspective, again, not in Ukraine but in a NATO country. And this may be the start of a bunch of dominoes falling, as far as reclaiming the Soviet satellite.
Is that still where we are, Fred? I mean, is this? It's slow. It's tedious. But is that where we're building up to? Putin's going to test NATO one of these days, or one of these weeks, or one of these months, or one of these years?
I'm actually not convinced of that. I think that what happened in Ukraine, the political developments that led to the downfall of the Russian government, sort of caught Russia by surprise. I don't think they're planning on going after protecting other Russian populations. Zbigniew Brzezinski says we need to find a solution to have Ukraine be a strictly independent, neutral state like Finland was during the Cold War. That might get Russia to back off and allow Ukraine to recover from this disaster. I think that's the direction we should be moving in.
And what's your take on him again with, because I think the top of your answer was cut off on your first answer when I asked you about his bending over backwards, not to make sure that Putin is kind of like not offended by all this. It's kind of bizarre in this situation, is it not?
It undermines that credibility. Either we're going to be tough with Putin or we're not. If we're tough with him, of course he's going to be offended.
Yeah. Okay. And
of course,
gentlemen,
it contradicts him. He wants to apologize to Putin today, but then he referred to them as Russia as a regional power before, which I thought would be highly insulting to Putin and Russia.
Yeah. Well, those remarks have been classified by many as well, in various ways. I don't need to go into them, but none of them too flattering, let's just say that. All right, Fred Fleitz, we appreciate it. Seton, we appreciate it as well, and we'll speak to you soon, both of you. The Malzberg panel, ladies and gentlemen, Seton Motley, founder of Less Government, and LigNet chief analyst Fred Fleitz. Very interesting. And, Obama setting new targets or a new trigger for more Russian sanctions, basically another, I wouldn't call it a red line. You want to call it a pink line in the sand this time? But, you know, how many of these lines could you draw, and what repercussions is Putin feeling, really? I don't know. Time will tell, I would imagine. All right, folks, we're coming back with more of the Steve Malzberg Show, but first, today marks the 3-year anniversary of the day we finally got Osama bin Laden. Let's take an in-depth look at how it went down with today's America's Moment.
In the early morning hours of May 2nd, 2011, the Central Intelligence Agency launched Operation Neptune Spear and set into motion a mission to bring one of the world's most notorious terrorists to justice. All indications were that Osama bin Laden was asleep as the U.S. Naval Special Warfare Development Group, known as SEAL Team 6, approached his highly secured 3-story Pakistani-based compound. From entry to exit took approximately 45 minutes, with the bulk of time being used to gather up a plethora of al-Qaeda intelligence materials. When located in his living quarters on the 3rd floor of his compound, the head of the Islamist group al-Qaeda was found using his young wife as a shield. The Obama administration reported the 54-year-old terrorist was given a traditional Islamic burial at sea. 9 years, 7 months, and 21 days following his infamous attack on New York's Twin Towers, killing thousands of innocent civilians, its mastermind, Osama bin Laden, was dead. You're watching An American Moment on Newsmax.